and I'm here with my friend Sally Kirkman from sallykirkman.com, and I'm from the Oxford Astrologer, and we are going to talk about the astrology of the month ahead, which we do every month at around this time. Hi, Sally.
Hi, Christina. How are you? You're sounding better than last month, but not completely.
Yeah, I'm still, I'm better. I am much better. But my voice is still a little bit weird, a little bit gravelly.
It's quite nice.
Yeah, my voice is sounding lived in, right?
Yeah, like you've been using it a lot.
Like I've been using it a lot, which I kind of have. Yeah, so normally we do a little retrodiction right at the beginning, don't we? So what have you got to report of the past month?
Well, we're in eclipse season.
Yeah.
A big part of this has been the Scorpio Taurus eclipse season. So I've really felt that, being a Scorpio, and I have my Venus is in Scorpio, and that's kind of been in the eye of the eclipse. So it has been quite intense and extreme. I've kind of, my moods, I had 1 week, my new lovely flat, and I'm in a new town. 1 week feeling really lonely and on my own, isolated. And then the next week was completely different. And I was like, oh, this is great. Meeting friends, getting out and about. So I've been very aware of these real swings and a lot of inner change going on. And also in the midst of that, I met up with my ex, who I haven't seen for a whole year. And that was lovely, actually. He brought out all his best characteristics for the meeting. So I was like, oh, he's so nice. Although I'm not going back there, but it reminded me of the things that I did love about him, and I do love about partnerships. I'm very aware of kind of, this being on my own, and what I love about partnership in these Scorpio Taurus eclipses, which is absolutely relevant for what's going on for Scorpio and Taurus, I would suggest as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very intense, we're still in a very intense time.
Yeah.
Because it's all connected, isn't it? Of course, but there's been all that, the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction of April has continued to give and give, and connects absolutely to the recent eclipse on the night of May 15th, the morning of May 16th. In Scorpio, made it was perfectly aspected by that eclipse point and by Neptune. So we've had this incredible energy, and I would say, sort of, I want to call it psychic energy, this energy, this watery energy. And I've really felt that a lot. And I've had to let go of a lot of the things that normally I deal with a lot, that is, keeping in touch with friends, seeing people. I have been really lax on that, answering emails, all of those kinds of things. I have been letting that all just wash over me, because a lot of stuff has been happening inside. I've talked to a lot of people who've been finding this time very overwhelming, very watery, who've there's people who've been experiencing a lot of grief, but also a lot of joy, that a connection to the numinous, I think. And that's ongoing really into the next month that we're going to be talking about.
It is, isn't it? It does feel kind of, we're in intense times. We're living through intense times. And just looking at the astrology of the month coming up, it's big astrology. There's so much happening. It does feel like being on a roller coaster ride rather than just plodding along.
Yeah. And I think it's really hard I think that it's so strong that you can only let a lot of it just wash over you or through you. And you can't think that you're that much in charge. You kind of have to go for it. It's like, when you're sailing or something, when you're on water, you have to go work with the elements, so to speak, with the wind and the waves.
And that, I think I agree. That's how I've been completely. It's like the emotions, different emotions that have come in have dominated and
Yeah.
taken me with them.
Yeah.
Until that emotion passes, and then another one comes in, and then, okay, we're going with this now. It does feel very much like that, actually. So yeah. Oh, and also I do, because I mean, we are in Mercury retrograde as we're speaking. Hopefully techie stuff will be all right today. But I did have, actually, there's sort of been a few twists and turns with that, but I did have quite a nice Mercury retrograde experience, in that I got sent a parcel, which I thought was a gift. It was some photo frames. I've moved into a new home, and I was trying to find out who'd sent me this gift. And no one, people were saying, oh no, sorry, I'll send it to you. And then I realized, I was waiting for an order of some doggy door stops, really important to have in your house. And they hadn't turned up. And the company had sent the wrong order. They'd sent these photo frames instead. And it was just as we were going into the Mercury retrograde phase that we found this out. It was sort of discovered. And I've ended up being able to keep both. They said, oh well, so Mercury retrograde in Gemini, I get both gifts.
Yeah, it was a twofer.
So that was quite nice.
Very lucky. Yeah, Mercury retrograde in Gemini. Well, we're going to be talking about that, aren't we? It's I think it's actually quite a useful retrograde myself. But so what else? I mean, we're going into, I mean, the other thing that that's been dominating the news, which I found kind of, it's interesting that we've had these tacky court cases going on. So there's the Johnny Depp one and Amber Heard that we talked about last time, which is this sort of scandalous and really distasteful court case in the States. And here we have this one that everybody's dubbed Wagatha Christie, because it's between two footballers' wives, wags, one of whom has accused the other of whom of leaking stories to the press about her. And the leaker, or alleged leaker, has taken the first one to court, claiming that she didn't. And it's very kind of, basically it is really tacky, but it's also interesting because it does reflect something about the zeitgeist, in that it's to do with leaking stories and scandal again, which is this Neptune and Pisces thing of trashiness. But also that I feel that there's something about that South Node currently in Scorpio, which is about sort of wrestling in the mud. People are wrestling in the mud because Scorpio is about the kind of drecky stuff, the hidden stuff that people don't want to talk about. And here it is all kind of coming out, all this terrible, dirty laundry coming out. And that fits with this eclipse a lot. And what's interesting about the second case, the Wagatha case, is that the person who brought the suit seems to be losing really badly. In fact, her reputation is ruined. And if she hadn't brought the suit, she could have just let it all pass. But there we go. And, the one who brought the suit, Rebecca Vardy, is an Aquarius. So Saturn's in her, going over her sun. She's suing an Aries, Colleen Rooney.
Yeah.
Who do you think's going to win that one then?
Well, she's got Jupiter on her side, hasn't she?
I think we can guess. I would put my money on the Rooneys.
Yeah, I know. It's and I kind of find it interesting that it is the Johnny Depp Amber Heard. I mean, she's a Taurus, he's a Gemini. The fact that it's still going on after we were talking about it a month later is absurd, really. But it is also, moving into Gemini season. I think that also, it's this she said, he said. It's all this. Gemini can be this tit for tat stuff, can't it? It's this, that you get into this argument, this sort of my side, their side. And it is one of the mutable, flexible signs. So you do get these, this duality or this kind of fight going on, this conflict between the different aspects of Gemini.
Yeah, do you know what I feel about that one? It's a revenge tragedy. It's that wanting to take revenge, and that is to me very Scorpio. And again, South Node in Scorpio, there's eclipse in Scorpio.
Yeah.
As we pointed out last month, they have a conjunction of Venus in Taurus, which is opposite this eclipse.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's really what it's about. It's tragic.
Yeah.
And it's tragic fools, as anybody who's watched, you think of, not that I think that Johnny Depp is a Shakespearean hero or anything, but it's always happens in tragedy that you sow the seeds of your own destruction. It's your own choices that bring you to that destruction. Whether it's and both of these also seem to be cases of hubris. We think we're more important. Someone pointed out also with this Wagatha one and with the Johnny Depp one is these are millionaires fighting each other, and normal people wouldn't even be able to afford to bring these cases.
Yeah.
And what does that say about our justice systems?
Yeah, which is also the Taurus Scorpio axis has been about money as well, hasn't it?
Oh my God, hasn't it just?
The crypto crash, which happened just as Mercury turned retrograde.
Yeah.
Mercury is also linked to the markets. Its names in merchandise and stock markets and all of that. So that was kind of the trigger. But it's these eclipses. We knew we were on this kind of rocky ride when it comes to money. We've got Uranus, the planet of the unexpected, in Taurus, the sign of money. And I did notice that one of the Bitcoins that was almost eclipsed was called Luna. We are coming to, there was this lunar eclipse as well.
Yeah.
So big extremes around money. I think a lot of people are finding that at the moment, that we were talking about bills and the bills, the money going out and needing to bring more money in. I mean, it's money is a huge theme for so many people right now. And it's again too, you're on a roller coaster ride with money as well during this period.
Well, I think actually that it's that's going to go on. I mean, because we know that these eclipses are matched by other eclipses later in the year, which there's one that's just as strong in Taurus in November. So the cost of living crisis, which we're in, is not going away.
Yeah.
It's actually just reality check now, because that recent eclipse made the square to Saturn. This is reality check. You're actually getting the bills in. I mean, in my household, we have started getting the actual new pricing in for things like electricity, which is absolutely unbelievable. How much it's gone up. I'm talking tripled, I think.
Yeah.
Do the math.
Yeah, I know. And that was like it'll go up by 50%. I don't think that's been true for hardly anyone that I know. It's either doubled or tripled.
Yeah, it's tripled
by, much more. So
yeah, which is actually unsustainable for a country. You can't do that to people. So that's also going to be interesting, is how this works out. It's some people will not be able to deal with this. And that I also associate with that South Node in Scorpio is drains, stuff going, just like pouring money away. The money is being poured away. And that's, I think, what it feels like for a lot of people, is suddenly a hole is opened up in front of them.
Yeah.
On happier news, I've sold that house in France, I think. Fingers crossed. I won't speak too soon because it's Mercury retrograde right now. But the house in France, I think, is going. And so, because that was a big money drain for my family, that it was very expensive. So hopefully that particular
you'll be plugging that black hole.
Yeah, exactly. It's now not going to be able to do that. Yeah, it was just it was like being sucked dry.
Yeah. So Gemini season, we're moving. It is. I mean, it's so different, isn't it? Moving into Gemini season from Taurus. There's this sort of, slow, steady, well, on some level, and then Gemini comes in, and it's all kind of ideas and talking and chatter and maybe being more social. We'll see if it comes in. Gemini is one of the air signs. It needs to interact. It needs to kind of brainstorm. So it's a very different energy from this. The sun's move through Taurus when we're moving into Gemini season.
Yeah, I love Gemini. I love that I love both Taurus and Gemini season. And I love that feeling of, obviously here it's spring, it's beautiful. And in Gemini season, you turn, it's you coming up to midsummer then. And that, so it's these 2 months here where the days are getting longer. They're so long. You have these beautiful long evenings. The flowers are blooming. And it's incredibly lush at the moment, as the spring has been gorgeous again. You can cut the air with the sort of like scent at night. The air is thick with scent here. You can I would say you can cut it with a knife, but that's not a very good description of scent. Perfumed. So the gardens are perfumed at the moment, and I love that feeling, that thing in Gemini season of the perfume, the fragrance in the air. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Gemini season. Which it begins on the 21st of May, doesn't it? That's when the sun goes into Gemini.
Yeah.
Shall we talk about the month ahead then? Let's move on. Unless we want to talk about Geminis in general, just because we sometimes do. I know you have don't you have a lot of tennis players who are Geminis?
Oh, loads of them. I mean, loads of them. I mean, Djokovic, Nadal, more from the past as well. Yeah, it's a very, no surprise. It's that hand-eye coordination and quick. You need to be moving around fast on a tennis court. So yeah, it's a very typical sign. I have a lot of journalists. Sorry?
Lots of journalists are Geminis.
Oh, journalists and people in the media. That's their domain, isn't it? The TV presenters, people in the media. I mean, that's where they thrive, really, because it's communication, but being a Scorpio, Gemini is a soulmate sign. It's not straight ahead, it's one to the right. And I end up having a lot of Gemini friends in my life who I love. And there is that kind of gathering of information and that lust for knowledge. There's that curiosity. But Scorpios sometimes do it on a deeper level, whereas Geminis, they want all kinds of different information. They want to find out this and that. And they love that kind of chatter. The chit chat and the finding out facts and things. It's a slightly different level to Scorpio, but I think the star signs have a lot in common, actually.
Yeah, Scorpio needs to develop expertise, really, whereas Gemini needs to just know a lot of stuff.
Yeah, true.
Gathering, it's an information gathering and sharing sign is one of the things that it does. And it's interesting that this month, on the day that the sun goes into Gemini, it makes a conjunction with Mercury, which is the ruler of Gemini, Mercury retrograde, of course.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's going to be some information coming out, some big secrets coming out on that day. It's like, pew, some new revelations, I like it when the sun and Mercury make these conjunctions, because it signals that the retrograde is beginning to do other stuff. It's from that time on, you get the sort of more smoothing out of all the issues that have come up during the retrograde, and you're beginning to sort out those problems. Of course, then Mercury dives back into Taurus for the rest of the month, which is interesting too.
I know. Only it's because it's at 0 degrees Gemini, isn't it? It's right at the beginning of Gemini. So Mercury's getting ready to go back into Taurus on the 23rd. I like the Sun Mercury retrograde conjunction, which always happens halfway through the 3 weeks, because it can often be a real time of insight, illumination. Something does the Mercury's so close to the light of the sun. In the zodiac, in the place it's at, that something does get illuminated by the sun. So I think it's a really good time. It's probably going to be a good time to sort of speak up, or read something, or have a conversation. I mean, it's that kind of feel, and gather information that then is going to be useful moving forwards.
It's obviously, it's a big sibling one as well. I mean, Mercury and Gemini are about siblings. Both of them, and I wonder whether it's having some kind of understanding of your sibling relationships, or it's also a sign that I associate quite often with friendship, these close friendships. there's some clarity that you get around one of those relationships at this point. And that's especially true maybe for Sagittarians because it's in their opposite sign, but also maybe for Aries because it's actually in the house of the siblings.
Yeah, and Leo as well. It's friendships. So for all the fire signs, particularly, relevant for those connections, friendships. But yeah, as you say, Aries is siblings.
Yeah. So and then it goes into Taurus, and that's going to feel quite a shift, I think.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? As the sun's sort of speeding up in a way, moving into Gemini, Mercury says, no, we're not ready yet.
Yeah. No, there's just some things I forgot that I left behind at the eclipse.
Yes.
By the way, the eclipse that happened on this, the mid-May eclipse, because that's where Mercury's on his way back to. He's going back to the point of the eclipse.
He is.
When did he get there?
He turns direct on June the 3rd at 26 Taurus. So, which is where the May 16th eclipse takes place.
So he forgot some stuff. He's going to go collect it, and he's going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking again, I think this is about secrets and stuff coming out and rethinking. And it's been thinking of that, how we were talking about the cost of living crisis that we're all in the midst of. Maybe, fingers crossed, this may be some I want to say maybe some governments will change their minds about how they're dealing with this, and help people a little bit, or have a rethink, because this is what Mercury retrograde is about. It's about rethinking how you're handling things.
Yeah.
And the thing that's being handled or rethought is that very eclipse point, all those things that we were talking about connected to that, to Scorpio.
Yeah, and it's interesting because often, there's kind of eclipse law is to wait a few days before taking action or making a decision. But this time around, it's actually wait until Mercury turns direct.
Yeah.
Really review all your options, think things through. If there's something big thing event that's you're wanting to deal with, I think you need to wait for the Mercury turning direct on the 3rd.
Yeah, I just want to correct myself as well, which is because the eclipse was in Scorpio, but Mercury is going back to Taurus at 26 degrees, but that's exactly opposite the eclipse. So when the moon was in Scorpio, but the sun on the eclipse was in Taurus at that degree, just to be clear about it. So in case there's some confusion there. So it's triggering the Scorpio eclipse by going back into Taurus.
Yeah, and what's kind of interesting as well, Venus joins Mercury.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Venus moves into Taurus. I think it's on the 28th of May. So she's coming out Mars sign Aries and moving into one of her signs of rulership. So I think particularly for Taurus Scorpio, what I was talking about at the beginning about, this importance of relationships or people coming back into your life. This could be quite a rich and fertile time for relationships, but again, just wait for that Mercury to turn direct, because it always brings new information to light, or something hidden, something you weren't seeing. You might find out more on that, as Mercury turns. But it does feel kind of quite rich and lush and fertile still in Taurus.
Oh yeah, very much so. I love Venus in Taurus. It's one of the best placements for her.
Yeah.
Of course, it's fantastic for anybody who's a Taurus as well. When you get your own goddess walks into your sign once a year, it's usually 3 weeks. They're very good. You're very attractive, and you're that Taurian ability to really enjoy the now, the good things in life, food, clothes, sex, becomes even more so when Venus is in Taurus, and we all get a little piece of that, hopefully, depending on where it falls in your chart. But obviously it's great for Scorpios.
And Capricorn, I'd say, because it's Capricorn's pleasure sector, which is really lovely. So yeah, it is a time to I think it's a time to indulge the senses and make the most of those simple pleasures. It's kind of the pleasures that are free, actually, you know, the things that don't cost you money. I mean, there's so much beauty and joy in the world, so it's really highlighting that and focusing on that. You know, so making the most of it. It's a gorgeous transit, as you say, Venus in Taurus.
And it happens every year. And
Yeah.
as you say, it's the free stuff. You know,
Yeah.
it's rolling around in the grass and
Yeah.
smelling the flowers and having very, very nice sheets, although maybe that costs something. But and this year Mercury is also in Taurus. So we're not leaving Taurus season abruptly, are we? We've still got a lot of energy. And because the nodes are also in Taurus, this is a Taurian, this Taurian spring lushness is carrying into Gemini season a lot.
Yeah.
And Mercury's going to be there. I can't remember for how much longer, but a lot longer. You know, Mercury turns direct on the 3rd of June, doesn't it? And then when does it leave Taurus?
It's mid-June. It's June the 13th. Mercury moves back into Gemini. And then really it's the end of the shadow phase for those people who like to deal with the shadow phase, June the 18th. So actually for most of Gemini season, Mercury is retracing its steps in Taurus, intensifying that in a way.
And a lot of this, I mean, it's interesting that we, you know, Gemini season is always about words. It's about the exchange of billet doux, you know, it's the exchange of words or words of, I'm thinking of, you know, it's a sign that's associated with songwriting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Songwriters like Paul McCartney, etc., who are Geminis, who can find the words, or Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan's the classic, isn't he?
Yeah, that the words come out. And it's interesting that Mercury's back in Taurus, looking for the words. It's like he's lost the words and he's finding them. So people may be retracting stuff that they've said, I think.
Which makes me think of those court cases you're talking
exactly
about.
Those court cases. So okay, so where are we with all this? So that's a major, and the thing that we haven't really discussed yet is what Mars is up to at the moment. My God, Mars is so important in this last week of May as well. So because we've been talking about these sort of lighter planets, but Mars is a hefty, still inner planet, and it's moving from Pisces on the 25th, is it?
It is the 24th. May 24th, it leaves Pisces. Yeah. And
that's really, really important. More important this year than ever, because it's moving out of mutual reception with Jupiter as well. So right now, as we're speaking, Mars and Jupiter are in mutual reception. So that means that Mars is in Pisces, the sign that is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is in Aries, the sign that's ruled by Mars. So they're working together. And so you have a Jupiter that's got quite a lot of Pisces going on still, and a Mars that's got a little bit of Aries going on with it already. And this gives a lot of energy to those particular things, wherever that falls in your chart. Those two planets, those two signs are falling in your chart.
But yeah, because the other thing that's quite interesting is that, you know, it's the only inner planet. I mean, both Mercury, communication, and Venus, love, relating, they both triggered the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces. But Mars meets Neptune on the 18th of May. It met Neptune, but it doesn't meet Jupiter in Pisces, does it? It's the only one, because Jupiter's already left. So you get this major Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Aries, not long after Mars moves into Aries. It's on the 29th.
But I would also say that Mars then is taking the energy from the Neptune in Pisces, that it has the conjunction, and it takes it to the Jupiter. So it's reimagining, rethinking, it's retriggering the conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune that we had earlier. But now that energy is moved, is half Aries. So it's about initiative. starting new things, the
mm,
beginnings of stuff. And
mm.
Mars going into Aries is always about starting something new. This happens every 2 years or so. But
Yep.
this time around, because it's going to make this conjunction of Jupiter and it's taking this massive tidal wave of energy with it, it's like a surfer, on the front of this
Mm,
Neptune wave, and it surfs straight into Aries,
mm.
up onto it, gets to the beach, that dry beach of Aries, and runs on those Jupiter. But because it's meeting Jupiter, this is about starting something big, a big thing. So
Yeah.
if you have anything that you want to begin, whether that's a big love affair or a big business, this could be a really good time, even though there's Mercury retrograde going on.
Mm.
The power of this conjunction is such that wouldn't, this overrides that.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely, because I think the end of May, you've got the Mars-Jupiter conjunction on the 29th. There's also a new moon in Gemini on the 30th. So I think things can be pushed through before Mercury turns direct, which I've sometimes seen happen. Mars and Jupiter together, I mean, they're just a real, they're courageous. It's a whoosh of energy. It's it's like freedom fighters. And what's interesting for me is that it's all happening in Aries, which is the sign of the individual. So it's a reminder that individual action can make a real impact in the world as well. It could be, it's quite volatile energy, because Mars rules Aries. It's now stronger than Jupiter in a way in Aries. So Mars is taking charge. But on a personal level, I think it's a time to be bold, to be daring. For Aries, this is incredible to have Mars and Jupiter together in your star sign. I mean, begin something new. And Aries is great at that. The first sign of the zodiac, spontaneous, take a leap of faith. It's jumping into things. And I think that Mars Jupiter is encouraging that.
Yeah, and I would say for those of us who are not Aries, watch out for the Aries and the Marsy people in your life, because they may be really going off on one.
Yeah.
Because this is actually, we're not talking about a rational, calculated thing here. This is about speed in Aries. And not thinking about things. And also it's the warrior planet in the warrior sign.
Yeah.
And it's not controlled like Mars and Scorpio is quite controlled. But Mars and Aries is like, wow. So I would expect it's quite explosive, this energy, I think. So just to be aware of that. I mean, for example, I wouldn't, on that day, I wouldn't want to be traveling too far, I don't think. Because, well, maybe you'd want to go really far and really fast. You could go to the moon and back or something on that energy. But some people will not be under control. Let's put it like that.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying, but I like it for movement. And then you've got the new moon in Gemini. It feels like movement. Yes, it may not suit everybody, I agree. I think it's going to be really interesting for Cancer, because it falls in Cancer's career sector, this Mars Jupiter. But it does kind of, that's who's in control. I mean, Cancer's one of the cardinal signs, one of the leaders of the zodiac. So it may kind of get Cancerians revved up and ready to start something new in the business realm. But also it could be someone you're dealing with who embodies this Mars Jupiter energy, who's kind of almost too much, or a real force to be reckoned with, and you get swept along with it.
It's really exciting. I also think, funnily, for Cancerians, there's something in there about making it's making a public statement, isn't it? Or doing something public, whether that's career or even like marriage, or just being on the red carpet somehow. There's something very kind of public about that Mars Jupiter, which, like, it's very good for sports, actually, is what I'm thinking, for people breaking records.
Yep.
Because, well, Mars is like the active athletic planet. So what we associate with athletes is having a strong Mars this Mars in Aries is incredibly strong, making conjunction Jupiter. I'm sure that there will be records broken in the next it's like 5 weeks that Mars will be in there. But I don't know what records need to be broken, but it's about that going a little bit further, because Jupiter is boundless. It's about breaking boundaries. And Mars comes in and breaks through that. I mean, I wouldn't want to make any predictions about the war in Ukraine, but I would, be watching that with this Mars Jupiter energy.
Yeah, no, it's volatile as well, isn't it? I mean, it is a volatile energy. Mars is god of war, so, and Jupiter expands what it touches. So yeah, I mean, it is it's a scary time, actually, I think, for
yeah, and it's suggesting that the boundaries are somehow broken with that energy, whether that means the war actually spreads, or this works out in a different way. Meanwhile, I mean, speaking of the war, what is happening with the goddess of peace is that she's left Aries now, and she's moved into Taurus. I don't know if that means she's washed her hands of the whole thing, or whether actually she's very strong too. So you've got a very strong Venus from the 28th of May and a very strong Mars from the 29th of May, which is also interesting. They're both in their own signs, right next door to each other. So I like the fact that Venus is actually strong. It makes me more hopeful about that situation.
And actually, just thinking about that for Libra, wow, that could be an exciting time for love and relationships, couldn't it? That could be a huge passion where where Libra leaps into that as the Mars Jupiter's in your relationship sector, and you've got this kind of real sexy Venus actually in Taurus for you. Things moving really quickly and fast with regard to relationships.
The other people that are really affected by that Mars Jupiter conjunction are Sagittarians, of course, and even Pisces, because you're both ruled by Jupiter. So when you have that conjunction with Mars, again, that gives you a big belt of energy. And for Sagittarians, I think this is especially nice, actually. It's like you might get on the plane, you take the journey, take off. And speaking of going very fast somewhere, or again, break a record, break your own record, whatever that is, however many times you go around the world.
But it could be about children. It could be about children too, couldn't it? For Sagittarius, it might be, being really proud of what's happening for a child and seeing their life move forward at a fast rate. Actually, maybe Sagittarius' children breaking records.
Maybe that's what it is. I associate that house with sports. That angle of the chart with sports. So you may be breaking your own. And also I think that it's about being more, doing something daring with this. You might do something physically daring. Take the bungee jump. And I can see them I don't know, doing some marathons, or something like that. And why not? Or start training for the marathon now.
And also the other sign I think that's important for is Scorpio, because it's in Scorpio's health and fitness sector in a way. So it's a good time for Scorpios to be really getting that Mars energy, and really getting on a fitness drive, or coming up with some doing strength training, but something really harnessing the power of that Mars.
And just the other fire sign, Leo, obviously this is about, again, it's about taking risks. It may also be about travel for Leos. It's about taking some kind of risk, and it's maybe about taking a risk with knowledge. So it would be about publishing your idea, starting a new course, that kind of thing. And it would be, if you started a new course of study, if you were a Leo, for example, I think that you would find that it went very quickly and that you were able to cut through it incredibly fast and learn it very, very fast, or reverso, teach it very fast.
Yeah. And interesting, I mean, you picked up on Pisces, money sector, things happening fast there, whether it's coming in, going out, swirling around. I mean, it's a lot of energy in Pisces money sector, so it could be a time to, to leap in.
It could be
ready to leap in around money, because of course the Mercury is retrograde in Taurus for a few more days. But I think the 29th, 30th, with the Mars Jupiter and the new moon, is going to get, it's going to be hard not to take the initiative, move things forward, push things through before Mercury turns direct.
And I think that's fine, because Mercury's already made the conjunction to the sun on the 21st. So it's gotten past that point. It's just a Mercury retrograde kind of thing that you're pushing forward, perhaps. Something deeper that you're looking deeper into, or something about, say, reclaiming land, or something ecological. I'm just thinking of the fact that Mercury's in Taurus retrograde. So, the idea that you're reclaiming something or redoing something and initiating that around then would be incredibly powerful. Or rewilding, your rewilding project, start it then. Or publicize it then. It is a very kind of powerful confluence of cosmic forces around the 30th. I like that new moon. I'm just looking at the chart for it.
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's an important new moon for Gemini. It's in your star sign, and it is this sense of having to really retrace, go back to the past with Mercury in Taurus, the sign before yours, or reviewing or revising or chasing things up. Really kind of use your skills of persuasion, or use your gift of the gab to start chasing things up, to get the ideas coming, to line things up, getting ready to move things forward. It's an exciting, I mean, when you get a new moon in your star sign, this is about personal goals. It's about kind of your identity. It's how others see you. It's your image, your profile. So it feels like a lot of strong energy for Gemini. And you've got the Mars Jupiter in your friendship sector as well. So, gather inspiration or people around you, get the influence of others. It does feel quite exciting.
Yeah, I like that period. I think it's good for Virgo as well, that new moon, because it's right on your the peak of your chart. So start a new chapter in your career. It's just a yearly one. It's not like a huge major thing, but it's always a good time to be thinking about what you want to initiate for the next 12 months in terms of your public profile or your status. It's a pause there. It's interesting that there's that new moon is sort of on its own in Gemini. All the other planets are elsewhere doing other stuff in other parts of the sky, which gives it a kind of slightly freewheeling aspect, like you can do what you don't want with that new moon. It's not, it's making, what's it aspecting even?
Well, really not a lot.
No. It's kind of
it's a pure new moon, isn't it? It's a pure new moon. It's new moon energy. It's forward moving energy.
Yeah, and I always think that the new moon after an eclipse, which this one is, it's not like the eclipse energy comes to an end, boom, stop like that, but it does mark the end of a certain amount of intensity of the eclipse season, if you see what I mean. So this eclipse season is marked by this very floating around new moon, this airy new moon that's not that tethered. So I actually think that, in fact, having said that it usually marks the end of eclipse season, this time not so much. Why? Because Mercury's gone back to the eclipse point, and it's still dragging stuff out of there. So I think we'll probably have another 2 weeks where we're feeling that eclipse energy pretty strongly. Leaking over from mid-May. Okay, where are we?
Well, we should move on to, it's, we both got quite excited about what was happening at the end of May. But moving into June.
Well, there's Mercury goes direct. I mean, that's really the first thing that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, it goes direct on the 3rd. And then the following day, Saturn turns retrograde, which in Aquarius. So, you know, that's it's kind of like a door opens and then you realize maybe something's not possible. Yeah. Saturn comes along and says, no, you can't do that. You know, the information comes to light and you get stopped in your tracks. I mean, that's a possibility with Mercury turning direct and then Saturn turning retrograde, or it's some kind of reality check.
It's definitely a reality check. And I'd like to point out that actually they're making an aspect to each other at this point, a hard aspect.
Yes.
So I think that Mercury may run into Saturn trouble. You know, you can't do that. And this is, I think it may, I wonder if these lawsuits are going to end, back to the lawsuits, but it's like, right, that's it. This is the rule. These are the boundaries. Stop. We're not going forward anymore. You know,
but I mean, they don't quite make the aspect.
That's true.
Mercury goes back to 26 and then says, oh no, I'm going the other way.
Yeah.
And runs off. It's like, oh, I'm going to bump into Saturn. Okay, let's run off.
Yeah. It's because the Saturn makes the boundary, right?
Yeah.
Saturn draws the line.
Yeah.
And then Saturn is going to, I mean, one of the good things about this is I quite like the fact that Saturn's going to be retrograde for a while. Because Saturn's been going along really fast and really hard.
Yeah.
When was it? Since December, is that right? I mean, it's been catapulting along struggling along as fast as his old withered legs can carry him. Yeah. He's tottering along really quickly. You know, making these, and there's been a lot of stuff about laws. Actually, I'm just thinking about Roe versus Wade, which is, I would associate with Saturn and Aquarius. These are laws and rules to do with society, because Aquarius is society. There's been a lot of stuff about that in the news. And, you know, here there's been all this stuff with the Attorney General and etc. There's been a lot of stuff around the judiciary here. And I think that it gives everybody a pause and it's time to rethink and stop trying to change these laws so quickly and make these new rules. I don't even dare think about what's happening with those poor people in China being taped into their houses. You know, the lockdown in China is just terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that
inhumane, isn't it? It just feels inhumane. It's not.
Feels dreadful. I'm hoping that Saturn retrograde might help that release.
Yeah, an easing way of this kind of draconian authority.
Yeah,
with it. Yeah, I mean, just on a personal level, I think it's interesting time for Taurus and Aquarius because you know you've got this Mercury running off in Taurus. I mean, maybe it's kind of escaping some kind of limitation or, you know, getting out the line of fire for Taurus, and you know, not wanting to do what an authority figure says or a parental figure says. And for Aquarius too, it might be about holding the line somehow, needing to kind of stand firm, maybe around a family situation, I think, as well. So interesting time for those two star signs in particular.
Yeah, and actually for their opposite numbers as well, right?
Scorpio and Leo. Yeah.
Yeah, and Scorpio. So for Leo, you know, that Saturn turning retrograde can mean that you may have found some people really blocking you, or you may have been having some difficulty in certain relationships. And that may ease actually as Saturn turns retrograde. Although, I mean, I think that speaking to a lot of Leos, they've actually been establishing some very good, strong new relationships in the past couple of years. And that's been quite intense. And maybe this allows you to ease off and recalibrate and think about how things have changed.
Yeah, and I mean, I know some Leos who dealing more with endings around relationships. So I think, you know, the Saturn, when Saturn turns retrograde on the 4th, that could be quite a definitive time.
Yeah, it's quite good. You know, it can be like letting go of a relationship that is just not working. You know, and actually, speaking of reality check, understanding that that's it. finished. It's over.
Yeah.
And that's always hard because there's nothing soft about Saturn, right? It's
No.
always hard, but it's a good
Yeah.
realization. And making with the connection with Mercury, seems to me that this can be literally about paperwork coming through for like a divorce, for a separation. You know, that there's been some delay and now it's going to go ahead, especially when the Mercury goes retrograde. There's a connection there. And there's a connection, obviously, with money, also sorting out the money situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So we should move on, because I'm just aware of the time. We should kind of look at the full moon, shouldn't we, on the 14th?
Yeah, let's look at that full moon.
I mean, it's kind of interesting leading up to that full moon. I mean, there's a Venus-Uranus conjunction in Taurus on the 11th. Always, well, I mean, that can bring surprises both ways, can't it, in the money sector? But it's kind of, it's that full moon is towards the end of Gemini season. And it falls at 23 Sagittarius. So it is also picking up the square to Neptune.
It's making a square to the Neptune. It's making a square to the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction from April.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's pinging that again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just quickly like to mention about the Venus-Uranus, though, that the volatility in money and currency carries on with Venus and Taurus, doesn't it? It's not a stabilizing force this time because Taurus isn't stable at the moment.
No, Uranus is there and will be there for another few years yet.
Yeah, so all the Taurus stuff that people just assume Taurus is like the stable sign. Well, that's not the story of Taurus right now. Taurus is a sign that's changing. Yeah, so this full moon at 23 is, again, do you know, it's interesting. Is it just aspecting Venus, Neptune? Is that the only aspects that it's casting? It's
the only major one, yes.
It's something dreamy about it. That full moon. There's something romantic about it, actually. And maybe there's a lot of wild stuff going on around, but there's something very beautiful about that full moon.
There is. And I think it is, you know, there are reverberations of the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction during it. And it may bring something to resolution in a way, some kind of insight or understanding about what's been going on over the last few months. I mean, a lot of people have had to surrender or found it very emotional or overwhelming with this Jupiter-Neptune. And it's been hard to make sense of things. But maybe this full moon is a time when you kind of see the situation or see what's been going on with a bit more clarity. And therefore you can, you know, you can make decisions based on what becomes clear. I mean, the full moon, I love full moons. It's the light of the moon, it's at its brightest. It kind of, you know, illuminates the situation. And there is this sense of clarity around it.
I agree. And I think what I'm getting is that this is like, so we've had months of this really amazing Piscean energy, this amazing psychic energy, these extraordinary eclipses. And you come into June now and you have this full moon. Now you can write the song about it, or you can paint the picture about it, or you can write the story about it, because it's not necessarily that you have absolute clarity, but you have but you can make it into art, right? And whatever that means to you. And this, I would be very interested. I think people should really be paying attention to their dreams now, by the way, currently, but also around this full moon. That's an amazing dreaming full moon. It's a beautiful full moon, and that counts for everybody, I think. Obviously, especially Sagittarius and Gemini, Virgo, you know, that there may be some, as you say, clarity. It's like a revelation or like a washing clean of a certain situation. It's like the rain stops and you wipe the windows and you can see, and what you see isn't so awful. It's actually, that might be really beautiful.
There's also, I think, it's important to point out that because the other aspect that it does make, actually, well, the sun does make, is a trine to Saturn. And Saturn and Neptune are making this really interesting semi-sextile. Because of Saturn turning retrograde, Saturn and Neptune stay both at 25 of their respective signs, Saturn, Aquarius, Neptune, Pisces. And we'll feel this energy at the full moon. And I kind of feel, the Jupiter Neptune was very hopeful. It's about dreams, but sometimes you can't anchor them. You can't, make them manifest. And maybe with Saturn working alongside the Neptune, there's a chance to actually, those dreams or ideas or, creative imagination, the things that have been bubbling up during the Jupiter Neptune, the Saturn maybe enable you to sort of make them real, bring them into life. I mean, that's the best way it could play out. I mean, the Saturn Neptune themes are quite complex.
It's very complex, but I like that. And I think that you're right. And it also, there's another, it's good that Saturn is stationing. It's a very, very strong Saturn in June, isn't it? It's really, really, things are getting very real with that Saturn. Because when a planet stations, it's actually at sort of maximum strength. Sometimes it's got this punchiness, and Saturn is in its favorite sign too. So we have this immensely powerful Saturn and a very powerful Neptune, because Neptune's in Pisces. And when you get planets making that, especially outer planets, really making that perfect semi-sextile aspect, it's not an aspect that we normally look at so strongly in a natal chart, but I mean, I would definitely, because they're both at the same degree. But when it's this tight like this, it becomes an incredibly strong anchor in the chart. And they're working together, but both from their own places of strength. So there's something also here about community. And to me, this has been one of the themes of this year so far, is thinking about community and how we fit into community, and also into spiritual community. What are we doing as in groups to connect with the numinous, connect with the other side? Because we can all do stuff on our own, but what are we doing in groups? And the reason it's about groups is because of this Aquarius Pisces energy. These two signs that are about the collective. And I would say Aquarius, Pisces, and also Capricorn, because Pluto's still in Capricorn, and Pluto's at 28 degrees. So it's within this powerful, I want to say triad of planets in these collective signs. They're actually very closely making close connections. So Neptune is sextiling Pluto, and Pluto is and they're both semi, and Saturn is right in between those two, holding them and saying, make something manifest. What is this Pluto Neptune thing going on as well? It's very interesting, and that is a theme of this whole part of this year so far, and it's suddenly becomes even stronger or more clear or manifest when that Saturn turns retrograde, and then we have this very nice full moon in mid-June.
Exciting.
It really is exciting. It's powerful. And to me, it looks like both good things and bad things are going to happen, but it looks like a time of revelations, of truths coming out.
And I do think, I mean, I like what you said about that Saturn Neptune. It's kind of find your spiritual group.
I think so.
It really is. And we need to bring, more of the sacred, more of the spiritual aspect into our communities. I think that's what people are hungry for. It's what really kind of matters. It's what really nurtures and nourishes. So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's like, who are you singing with? Who are you singing with? And if you're not, I think it's helpful for people to actually get out there and make an effort to do that. At the same time, we've got Jupiter going off into the sign of the individual and Mars. So that's quite a different kind of energy.
Yeah, it is.
Well, And that's all about, that really is about the individual, isn't it?
But maybe you can do both. You can have your group and you can take individual action. So
well, and Jupiter is going, is the ruler of Pisces. It's a Pisces Sagittarius planet, isn't it? And Jupiter is all about, not all about, but one of its the things that it rules is religion, is organized religion, isn't it? Popes are Jupiterian.
Yep.
Okay, is that it? Are we going to stop now?
Yes, we are. Because we've been talking for some time, and
okay, I think we better stop.
We need to stop. But yeah, have a great month, everybody. Thank you so much for listening in, and we'll see you on the solstice.
Yeah, bye.
Take care.